Is the highest ranking Jewish American lawmaker in the United States. What do you think these comments ultimately reflect? What's your read on what has just happened here?
Well, it's important to realize that Schumer is probably the Democratic lawmaker with the record of being most pro-Israel. Of course, let's remember how the JCPOA debate played out back in the Obama years. Schumer sided with Netanyahu's position, not Obama's position. That's one of many examples of times that Schumer has bent over backwards to stand up for the Israeli government. So at a time in which more and more Democrats are criticizing Israel, it's not surprising to necessarily hear a Democrat come out with these comments. But the fact that Schumer was the one who had these words is significant. But let's also keep in mind that while these comments are significant, they're just comments. These are just words. If Netanyahu stays in power, would Schumer be supportive of the U.S. using its leverage to pressure Israel into changing its behavior? I'm pretty skeptical about that. Again, I don't want to be dismissive about the significance of these words, but also words are just words, and we need to keep that in mind.
I think it also ultimately reflects that the extremists within Netanyahu's kaleidoscope coalition have now become a liability for the Democrats as they head towards the November election stateside. Would you agree?
Well, absolutely. And we have to keep in mind the factor of domestic politics in the United States, especially among Democrats, particularly those who are younger, Democratic voters of color, more progressive Democrats are increasingly opposed to the U.S.-Israel relationship in its current form. There's no doubt that Israel's move in an extremist direction, more of an extremist direction, has contributed to this. At the same time, there is an important international dimension we have to consider as well. Israel is becoming an increasingly isolated country in the world. And for U.S. politicians like Senator Schumer, who genuinely cares about Israel and is a big believer in the U.S.-Israel alliance, he's worried about optics on the international stage. And I think he's trying to sort of push a narrative that the conduct of Israel is very much connected to Netanyahu, and if Israel would just have better leadership, the situation would be much better. And I think this is sort of about trying to preserve the U.S.-Israel relationship and to try to limit the damage done to the U.S. reputation as a consequence of Washington's ironclad support for Israel these days.
Important to point out a few other things here. As I mentioned earlier, the State Department rushed to say that this was not an official US position. At the same time, those comments also drew some sharp criticism from Republican lawmakers who have been staunch allies, at least some of them, for America's continued an ongoing relationship with Israel. And then also at the same time, also important to point out that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does still enjoy some degree of popular support on the ground in Israel as well as he continues this war against Hamas. Broadly though, how do you expect this to impact the US-Israel relationship moving forward? And is there any possibility that we could see conditions on arms sales moving forward, perhaps a change in how the United States views its funding alliance with Israel as well as a result of how Netanyahu has conducted this war?
Well, short term, I'm not so sure that anything Chuck Schumer said is going to have any direct impact on the U.S.-Israel relationship. But I think there is a message for the Israelis to hear, which is that this extremist government with figures like Ben-Gvir holding top positions in the government, it makes it more controversial for Democratic lawmakers to be so supportive of Israel. And that's a message that I think Schumer and some others in the Democratic Party were keen to deliver to Israel. But, look, we're almost 6 months into this war on Gaza, and the Biden administration has not used U.S. leverage to pressure Israel into changing its conduct. Maybe that will happen later, but I don't see any indicators that the Biden administration is serious about leveraging U.S. influence over Israel to bring about that outcome. I don't expect that to happen, to be frank with you.